Well, that was quite rusty, but that's okay. It's solo jazz guitar. No, I'm kidding. It's not okay. But it's sort of okay. Things happen, and that's kind of part of the charm. If you're here, you might be at a point where you're thinking about getting into solo jazz guitar, and it's a huge task, no doubt about it. Or maybe you're, it's something that you've sort of been tinkering with, but you're looking for some inspiration or some ideas. Now, I am not the biggest authority on this. I'm very passionate about it. I love playing solo jazz guitar. And over the years, I've actually been able to use it to pay a few bills, which has been really cool. There was a time where, I would play a gig for $100, maybe dinner for myself and my wife, and it just allowed us to save a little bit of extra money or put a little bit of money aside for bills. It was a really wonderful thing. More than ever now, it's just my own pursuit, and I quite enjoy it. I still do gigs with that kind of stuff, but it also makes my general understanding of the guitar and music continue to develop and improve. So today we're going to be looking at solo jazz guitar best practices. So I'm going to give you a couple of the common practices or the typical ways I see solo jazz guitar approached by the greats, we would say. And I'm also going to give you a couple of ways to move forward with wherever you're at. Be it a beginner or maybe someone that has certain ways of doing it, this video may offer you some different ways. So stick around to the end because some of the best advice is going to come along there. But along the way, we're going to take a look at some really cool stuff as well. So for today's video, I've kind of boiled solo jazz guitar down to three main approaches. A block chord type approach, commonly used by someone like Joe Pass. Chord tone and melody approach, more commonly used these days by guys like Bill Frisell and Julian Lage. And lastly, single note and chord approach. Someone like Joe Diorio does a really good job of this. And in fact, all of the players I mentioned really do all of these things, but I feel like there's a real common theme with each of those. So I'll get a little bit more into that as we go through the video. So the block chord approach generally entails using block chords. So even standard chords, for example, G major chord, and then, like a minor 7 chord, and then 9 chords, and things that you would probably be familiar with if you're starting to look at solo jazz guitar. And also using inversions of these to help us accommodate or facilitate the melody. So for example, my little version of Darn That Dream. Okay, I'm having to slightly modify the way I play it normally to actually use block chords because I do use a combination of things. But you can see there most of the chords that I'm playing are fairly somewhat standard jazz guitar chords. Even that's actually just a major chord. And then I'm using a B flat minor 7. Then I'm using an A minor idea, which I think I play open in my arrangement, but you get the idea. And then I'm using this dominant 7 chord. And what I've done is I've basically just placed those chords in reach of the melody. So So I'm actually going to talk. You can see there I'm slightly struggling with the melody, just playing it on its own, which I'm going to talk about briefly. That was one of my mistakes when I was learning a lot of this stuff or putting a lot of this stuff together, but I will talk about that after. So you can see that melody moving along the neck, and those chords simply facilitate that. That's actually an E flat little block chord there. Okay, we've got that A minor. And we've got our melody there. Sorry, I was just thinking about the melody. It's complex stuff, anyway. Then we've got our E minor. There's our note. So you can see, it's not super complicated if you've got a good grasp of block chords. Now, again, I'll mention the issue that I have with doing that later when I talk about how to proceed and how to move forward if you're developing this style. But first, let's move on to chord tone plus melody. So chord tone plus melody, Julian Lage is great at this. He, I believe, learnt this sort of stuff, or I think he had some lessons with Martin Taylor, if I've heard that correctly. And those guys have this sort of thing down, So I've got my own. These are my own arrangements, by the way. I don't want to use other people's arrangements. I kind of just want to show you my influence to these things. But When You Wish Upon a Star... Okay, so what I'm doing there, I'm really thinking about chord tones instead of block chords. So I'm literally just looking to grab the one particular chord tone. It can be the first degree, third degree, or fifth degree generally. Of course, there's other options, but so I'm playing that melody, which is where was I? So you can see I'm playing a C. That's our root note. So. And then I'm playing a C sharp, and I'm grabbing my melody up here. So now that C sharp, it's just the root note on a chart, but that C sharp diminished could also be taken from an A7. So let's say the progression was an A7. It was like a C major, A7. We don't have to grab the A. Okay, we can actually grab the third degree of the A dominant 7. So when you wish, because that could be an A7. On a star. I'm going to stop singing now. So you can see I'm grabbing the third degree of the A. Now we're back to a root note of D. And I'm playing the melody. Can actually just keep moving and create tension, but let's just stay on the D. Now this is, again, a little more interesting. It goes to a G7. I'm going to grab the B here, right there. Then the fifth degree. Okay. And then that's using the third of the C diminished, okay, because of the chord in the chart. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about this momentarily, okay, these complexities that are very quickly appearing into the C. So I'm moving to the E natural of the C, and the melody's at the top there, and then I grab the bass note. So you can see I'm not stuck in chord boxes. I'm working with almost a bass line, like a single note bass line, drawn from chord tones. First, third, and fifth are probably the most basic. You can get into some interesting stuff later if you want to try using flat sevens at the bottom and whatever. You can actually, if you know where you're going to go with that bass line, you can do some really interesting stuff and almost completely abandon chord tones if you have a direction you want to go or a note that you want to land on. If I kept going up, see, I play that note there, and then we go... I've thrown myself... I usually go to F, actually, by the way, which is the minor third. But I could keep... So that time I kept walking up. I found a note here. I just kind of made up a bass line there. Probably could have been better. But the point is, if I'm heading towards something that's going to work... Actually, that sounded great. That was actually the sixth degree of G. But it worked. So if you get the idea. Well, let's keep moving. That's something to experiment with. It's okay. So the third common approach is to play the melody and play the chord. Now, I remember, I think it was Joe Diorio talking about this in one of his videos, talking about solo jazz guitar. I need to check the time. I have a lesson in 15 minutes. Joe Diorio talked about, I think it might have been play the melody, play a fill, play the melody and play the chord. It was something along the lines of that. But the important thing here is that you basically play the melody somewhat separately and you can play chords thereafter. So, for example... Now, if you're playing that in free time, that's obviously all of me. If you're playing that in free time, for example, you could... Now, let's try that again. Then you play the chord, then you might do a fill. You might... Whoop. Yeah, I probably should have actually thought about that before I did it. But that's actually one of the beauties of solo jazz guitar. If you've done enough work, sometimes even like I haven't thought about that standard today. I'm just making that up on the spot, and that's again something I'm going to address a little bit later. Okay, don't panic when you hear that. That's definitely not par for the course or a necessity right away. So there, to me, kind of the three main approach. It's either kind of in a block chord thing. There's kind of some kind of bass line going along with the melody in a chord tone and melody approach, or that last one where you're playing the melody and throwing chords in there at will and maybe doing fills. I'm not particularly great, especially at putting fills in. I've not really gravitated towards working on that. It's very challenging, but that's kind of one of the beauties again of solo jazz guitar is, you know, you can kind of make of it what you like. There are a lot of people who will tell you to do certain things. I know, very ironic, me making this video. But I also noticed there wasn't a lot of info on it, and this is stuff that's taken me 20 years, and I've probably got another 20 years of work to go before I'm going to feel like I'm any good at it. So that's the crazy thing about solo jazz guitar. But don't be discouraged, okay? So let's get into a little discussion now about some really great ways to approach it if you are getting into it, where to start. Let's start with not making the mistakes that I made, and that was coming back to what I talked about with the block shapes. And you could see I was struggling to play that melody with, I think it was that one, pretty much all of them, which I'm now going to explain. I often put my arrangements together at the same time, so I would work out my chords and melody kind of together. And what happens when you do that is you eventually end up with this muscle memory version of the arrangement, but it's then almost hard to remember exactly what the melody is, and you can also get a little vague on what the actual harmony is when you go to improvise over it. So I would do a lot of gigs where I'd play my arrangement, then I would improvise for a hit or two, and I'd be thinking, I don't even know the chords. I have no idea what the chords are. Or if I get lost in the middle of my arrangement, I kind of don't really know the melody to carry me through. I'd get by on my ear. It's amazing what a bit of pressure will do. But it was a really frustrating feeling after doing a lot of gigs playing solo jazz guitar, realizing I don't even know the melody to some of these tunes, you know, on its own, and the harmony feels sketchy when I'm soloing. I have to kind of bluff my way through. So I wrote some tips on the back here. Hang on. So yes, obviously that right there is really where to start, is actually just learn the melody of the songs and learn the harmony really well. Okay, so that's huge. And ignoring that, you might have some beautiful arrangements to play, which is great and fine, but you will find those difficulties if you go to play it at a jam and the band plays it really fast and you can't smash out your arrangement. You're going to be thinking, God, I just wish I knew the melody. It's a weird feeling. I actually always kind of got by. It's like I said, it's amazing what some pressure will do, but it made me realize there's a better way to be doing things. So learn your harmony, learn your melody, and then put it together with one of those techniques from I mentioned before, either assembling it into the chords or finding the chords that will fill, which you will have to use inversions as well, obviously. You're not always going to be able to just use simple block chords, but you can go a long way with that. And then the other thing is, knowing your harmony too will mean that you just know your chords when it comes time to comp, or when you're improvising, you'll know your changes, which again seems really simple, but I don't know, my brain. Now this brings me pretty much to my last tip, because everything I mentioned just there, it's really what it's about, getting your harmony down and getting your melody, and all the skills that will come with that as you start putting it together are really important. But this last part, something I also neglected, but I've kind of come to a different understanding of how to express this, for example, to students. I never really spent time moving the keys, okay? But the reason you want to do that is you start to see what the chord tone is in reference to the chord, and that is extremely useful. So here's another way to think about it. When you're learning your arrangement, try to be cognizant of what chord tones or what the chord relationship is with the melody. So if I'm playing Fly Me to the Moon, I want to be thinking when I'm working this out, it's an A minor chord, That's the note C. So that's the third degree, or the flat third, okay, of an A. And when I play an A minor, I'm starting on the third. Even if you don't think about it for every note, when the changes happen, really focus on that. So now we're on the third degree of the D minor chord, the flat third degree from D, which is the F. Okay, then we walk up, go to the flat 7. There's the third degree of the G, G7, and we resolve to the third degree of the C. Now, if I want to move key, it's actually really easy now. I can pretty much just start off that third. Let's say, let's do it in F minor. This is a horrible key, but third degree. Now we know that the chord went up a fourth to the B flat, so I'm going to play the flat there. And I remember that it skipped a note to the flat 7, and we're going to go to a dominant 7 chord and play on the third degree. Okay, so see, I just moved that melody to a really awkward key, but it didn't really matter because I had that reference point. So that's really it, guys. There, probably to me, I should say folks. I much prefer to say folks. That's my loose summation of the best practices and some of the things to watch out for with solo jazz guitar. I hope you really enjoyed this video, and if you do want more, please let me know. This channel is all about my solo jazz guitar arrangements, but I've really had it in me to make this video for some time. I've been really wanting to. I make rockabilly tutorials on my other channel and really enjoy that. So I thought, why not? Let's just put it out and see if people dig it. So thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.